2009 BMW 550 with the 4.8 liter V8 knock sensor replacement. I'm Brian Eslick from How To Automotive. I'm going to walk you through the process for changing those out. We're going to start by removing the top engine covers. Remove the tins. Now that you got your engine cover off, we need to turn our focus to removing the cowling up here. And the reason why is we need to get this intake manifold off. So the first step to getting the manifold off is to remove this cowling piece here. So you're gonna take your cabin filters off. So you pop the clips here in the corner here in the corner on this side here too. And then right here there's gonna be a plastic little 13 millimeter nut. You're gonna turn that like 90 degrees. It has a little arm in there it catches, and then you'll lift this panel off. And you'll do the same thing on this side. You'll turn this little plastic nut about 90 degrees or a quarter turn or so, and until the little catch unhooks, and then you'll lift this off. And you'll set them aside. On the passenger side, it will have the sensor for the hood and the ambient air temperature sensor. So you can just twist it a quarter turn like that and lift up. And then this sensor, you can just push the little squeeze tab and pull the connector off. And then you can remove the cabin filter out. Next, on the strut tower, there's a torque here you're going to remove, and there's going to be the same on the other opposite side. A torque here you're going to remove. After removing the torques, you're going to turn these clips here counterclockwise, quarter turn, three right here, and then there's going to be 3 more on the opposite side. Turn those a quarter turn. Then you're going to peel your weather stripping off. Just peel it off and set it aside. And then right here you're going to lift this little tab up right here and then slide this whole panel towards you, and it locks into place right there. So once you get those slid to the towards the driver's side of the car, then you can lift the panel out and set aside, and you'll lift the panel for the passenger side out and set it aside too. Next I'm going to remove the air snorkel. So I'll just loosen the clamp here and the clamp here, and pull the from here to the throttle body. Remove the snorkel. After removing the snorkel, I'm going to remove the 4 bolts that hold the throttle body on. I'm going to leave the electrical connector connected up, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the housing out and kind of just lay it in this area over here. Now that you got the throttle body off, the next thing you want to do is unplug the purge valve, the line for the purge valve, EVAP purge valve, and just squeeze the little tabs. So you'll just squeeze on this side and this side, and then pull it off. And be careful, and you can also, if you can't get it to squeeze, you can use a little pick right here, and kind of flare the little tabs out. But you got to be very careful because it's really easy to break this. After a while, they get hard and they break. So I'm going to try to squeeze it like this and pull off, and then after you do that, you're going to do the same thing for the vent lines here. So they got a squeeze tab here. So you'll squeeze here and pull towards you. On the driver's side valve cover here, you'll pop this line off here, and then you follow this one around and you pop this one off here, and this whole breather system here will pop off and set aside. So once you get the purge valve off and the breather system off, the next step is going to be, so the next thing I'm going to do is right here, I'm going to unplug this electrical connector housing right here. They kind of have these little tabs right here. They kind of flare up, and then you pull this off. And after you get that done, you can do the same thing on this side. Unplug it there, and then you're going to remove the torque bolt here, and you're going to have the same thing on this side. So you'll remove the torque here and here. And you can also unplug the vanos by just squeezing the tabs and lifting upwards, both left and right side. After you get the bolts off, you can remove these brackets and set them aside, making sure you keep track of the left and right side. So you're also going to unplug the electrical connectors here on the front of the wiring harness on the left and the right side of the intake manifold, and kind of just leave them hanging there. So after unplugging the electrical connectors here, you need to get this cover here off the top of the valve cover, and it's just pressed on, so you pop it up and kind of just work it out. And after that, you need to unplug the sensor here, so you just kind of wiggle it and pull straight up, and they'll disconnect like that. And the same thing with the sensor below it. So now we need to get these two electrical connectors off here, and the best way to do it is, if you can see in there, it has a little tab, so you put a little pry tool or a little pick like this, and you flare the little tab open a little bit like I am right here, and then you pull the electrical connector straight up, and they'll come off just like that. And you want to pull, and there's the little thing you're prying back right here on that electrical connector, so you just pry it back just a little bit, and when you pull these off, you want to pull from the you want to grab it by the plastic part and pull. You don't want to pull from the wires, because it will pull the pins out of the connectors. So there's the main plug, and there's two other smaller ones you're going to pull out. So basically you follow these three here, and unplug those. Okay, now that you got the three electrical connectors here unplugged, we need to remove the or disconnect the fuel line here. So you're going to pop this little gray plastic clip off. Take that off and set it aside, don't lose it. So when you pop it off, it'll look like that. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take this little plastic connector here and push, actually you're going to push the fuel line in towards each other, and the line this end towards each other, and push this plastic connector inside there, and it'll flare out these little teeth in there that hook onto a lip in there, and then you can, after you push this all the way in, then you can pull the line apart. So you're going to push them together first, push the plastic piece here in, and then pull and hold with this hand and pull off with that hand. And it'll come off like this. Now right here, there's a little wire loom holder. You want to pop all the wires out of there on top of the valve cover there. And you just want this to float as high as you can. Next, you're going to pop off any of the wire looms that are in the wires that are in the wire loom here like this. You can leave the fuel one on. So you'll pop that off. And now we'll unplug the coolant temp sensor here. And then what that'll do is allow you to flip the wiring harness out of the way like that. And then this harness here, I'm just flip it down and tuck it down here. And what I'm going to do now is pull. Okay, before I attempt to take the intake manifold completely out, what I'm going to do is remove the strut bracing here. So I'll remove the torque here, the two torques here, and the torque bolt over here. So on my car, the wiring harness goes under the fuel lines that go to the fuel injectors. And instead of tracking all those wires down and unplugging, and what I'm going to do is just remove the fuel rail and just take the fuel rail out completely. And to do that, what you're going to need to do is just remove there's a couple torques here and a torque right about here. Right there, you'll just maneuver the wiring harness kind of out of your way and remove the torque there. So there's two on the driver's side and two on the passenger side. So you'll maneuver the wiring harness out of your way, and then once you pull the bolts out for the torques here and back here, then you can just pop the injector rail up. All the injectors will pop out of the intake manifold. But when you go put it back together, you will need to order at least the bottom injector seals. You'll also need to remove the ground strap that goes to the fuel injection rail. Once you pop the injectors out of this little thing, then you can kind of twist them a little bit and pull them and work them towards the front of the car, and lift up the wiring harness at the same time and kind of work them out on the left and the right side. It's going to kind of get caught behind the vanos a little bit, but you can just wiggle them and kind of twist them a little bit like this, and slowly kind of work them out towards the front of the car. There's also going to be a ground strap on the driver's side and the passenger side. So now you can work the injectors completely out like this and set that aside. And these are the injector O-rings at the end of the injectors here. And as you can see, this one's missing. It's stuck in the intake manifold. So you'll definitely need to order a new set of these, at least the bottom ones. So there's going to be 8 O-rings you're going to need. Now that you got the fuel injector out, the rail out, you go ahead and remove the bolts to hold the intake manifold up. So there's going to be 10 of them in total. So 5 on this side. So it's just going to run along the intake. I've already removed some of them, as you can see. So you'll remove all 5 on this side, and then you'll maneuver the harness out of your way, and then you'll take out all 5 of the nuts, 11mm nuts that hold the intake manifold on. Go ahead and remove so we're just about ready to start pulling the intake manifold out. But before I do, I like to take an air blower like this and blow along the edge of the where the manifold mounts up on both sides, and try to blow any debris or dirt out before we attempt to lift the manifold up. That way reduce the amount of dirt and debris that might possibly fall into the valves on the Okay, before we're ready to lift the intake manifold out, there's a few electrical connectors on the back of the intake manifold, and I'm gonna try to get my mirror down here where you guys can see them. But anyways, so there's 2 connectors for sure down here. There's one here on this side and one on this side. And what you can do is you can reach your hand. Let's see if I can reach your hand around the back of the intake manifold, and you can get your fingers on them and push the connectors off. If you can't do that, if your hands are too big or whatever, what you can do is lift the manifold up and try to slide it off the studs, and try to slide the whole manifold an inch or 2 forward, and then you can get plenty of room to stick your hand back here and disconnect the final electrical connectors. So these are some of the connectors I'm talking about. Let's see if you can see them down there. They're just in the back of the intake manifold back there in the back. So you can reach your hand, I can reach my hand on the driver's side and reach around and unplug one, and then I go on the passenger side and reach around the back of the intake and unplug the other one. Once you get the 2 electrical connectors in the back of the intake manifold just unplugged, now you should be able to just kind of maneuver the wiring harness out of your way left and right, and kind of just work the whole intake manifold out of the car. So on my car, you may notice that there's a coolant leak, and this valley pan here is leaking, and I pleaded with the customer to repair it and fix it, but he does not have the funds, so I didn't want you guys to yell at me, why didn't you fix the coolant leak in the video? So I just wanted to point that out. But we're going to continue with replacing the knock sensor. So the knock sensors, you got 2 on this side and 2 on the bank 1 and bank 2. So go ahead and remove the bolts, and then just position your new knock sensors in place and torque them down to 15 foot-pounds. Okay, when you put your knock sensors on, if you put the wire facing downwards, that'll help lay it so it'll lay in the valley here and it won't get pinched with anything. And remember to torque them down to 15 foot-pounds or 21 Newton meters. And after that, we'll change out the gaskets on the intake manifold. Wanted to show you the part numbers for the knock sensors real quick. They're both the same, left and right. These are the part numbers for the O-rings that go in the intake manifold, but they're all individual, so you have to make sure you get all 8 of them when you order them. Okay, now that we changed all our O-rings on our intake manifold, you need to clean the mating surface on the block, and then I recommend you look inside each one of the valves, the ports, and make sure nothing fell into the valves, and if there it is, fish it out obviously. So next, after we do that, what we're going to do is we're going to put the intake manifold back in, and we're going to put it in about 3/4 of the way, and then while it's about 3/4 of the way in, we have enough room to reach our hands around back and plug the 3 electrical connectors on. So we'll plug the 3 connectors on, and then we'll finish pushing it all the way through and putting it over the studs. And you may have to have somebody help you hold the wiring harness out of the way. Okay, now that you got the 3 connectors plugged in the back of the intake manifold and manifold back onto the studs, What I like to do is just take a mirror and kind of look around as many spots as I can to make sure there's no pinched wires, or gaskets didn't fall off or anything. And once you're confident that that's in good order, you can go ahead and start the 11 millimeter nuts that went on the studs here on both sides, And then after that, what you're going to do is you're going to torque the intake manifold down to 16 foot-pounds or 22 Newton meters, and you're going to do it in a crisscross pattern. So you'll start on one side here, and then you'll go to the middle here, and then here, back, front, like that. And once you get it all torqued down to 16 foot-pounds or 22 Newton meters, that'll complete that step of the job. The next step after getting the intake manifold torqued down is to put our fuel injection rail back on. But before we do that, I recommend you change the O-rings. You don't want a fuel leak. So now that I've changed all my injector O-rings, I put a little lubricant on them, so when they slide in, they go in nice and easy. And the next thing to do is kind of lift your wiring harness up like I did over here, and route it through, and then stab the injectors into the ports. And then once you get all the injectors, all 8 of the injectors in the ports, then I like to push them down evenly. And then after that, I start the torque bolts that held it in place and go ahead and tighten those down. So now you can see how I got my injectors routed in. So I'm going to push them in. I got them all in the spot, so I'll just push them down to the seat all the way across. And then I'll start the Allen screws and tighten those down. Then I'll also reinstall the ground strap on the left and right side of the injector rail and start those bolts. So the other one's over here. Okay, now that I got the injector rails remounted and the ground straps hooked back up, we're going to start hooking the electrical connectors and everything back up. So I like to start on one side, either the left or right, doesn't matter, and kind of start from the back and plug in anything that I just unplugged. So I'm on the passenger side here. I didn't really unplug too much on the passenger side, mostly on the driver's side. So I'm going to go ahead and start by plugging this gang plug here, plugging the Vanos hose back in, making sure all my injectors didn't come unplugged or anything. Double check my routing, and I popped the cover off here for the valve cover, so everything here is re-secured. So I'm going to go ahead and just push that back on in place, put it back in place, and snap it into place. So now I'm working towards the front of the car. So I'm going to take my knock sensor connector here, and you want to make sure you don't mix them up, because you can't. They are long enough where you could mix them up. And go ahead and route that in here and plug it in. So once this side's all secure and everything's plugged back in, including any temp sensors you may have unplugged here in the front, go ahead and plug those back in. And then after you get that done, these little metal rails that we took off, and there is a difference between left and right, so go ahead, make sure you remember which way they go. And go ahead and put that one back on. So I'm working on the driver's side here, the passenger side here. I'm going to go ahead and put this one on and bolt it up. Since I'm at the front of the motor now, I'm going to go ahead and plug in my evap turds line right here. You just put it in the port and push on. Go ahead and plug in the temp sensor that was on this pipe from the wiring harness from the driver's side here. Plug that back in right here. And then you can go ahead and change out your throttle body O-ring, and go ahead and put your throttle body back on. I never unplugged it, so you go ahead and put it back in the position where it was, and bolt it back up. Now that the throttle body hooked back up, you can go ahead and bolt up or unplug in your knock sensor for the bank 2 here, which is right here. You just kind of route it through here, all this stuff, and plug it in. Now you want to take the wire, the bunch of wires here, and reinstall it in the loom here if you took it out, and put it back in there. So that pretty much secures most of the front. We'll put the vent lines on in a second after we get all the electrical connected. So the knock sensor's plugged back in. You can go ahead and plug in the injector harness here. Plug that in. And then we can go around to the side where we took these three connectors off here and go ahead and plug those back in. They just push back into their proper plugs, and you can kind of tell by how long the wires are. They'll kind of just the way the wires are routed, you can kind of tell exactly how they go. Go ahead and plug them back in, all three of them, and plug the vanos back into. So after you got everything on the back of the cylinder head here plugged back in, I like to look around with a mirror one last time and double check that everything's plugged in and secure. You can go ahead and put the mounting plate here back on and mount that and tighten that down. Okay, after that's secure, we're going to go ahead and put our cover over our valve cover, and after we're done with that, we'll put our fuel line back on. Now that we got our valve cover decorative cover back on, we're going to take the fuel line and push it on until it clicks, give it a pull, and make sure it doesn't pop back off, and then reinstall our safety clip. Now we can reinstall our PCB vent lines, so they just push on. Next, we can install our air snorkel here. Now at this point, the vehicle is capable of running, and if you would like to, you can start the car up now and make sure there's no fuel injector leaks or anything like that. And then if everything is good like that, you can go ahead and proceed with putting the covers back on. But note that it may set a check engine light or store codes, and due to having other sensors, like the here in the cowling, the ambient temp sensor or whatever, it may have been unplugged while you're doing this. So after you're done, you may have to clear the codes. So mine's in good shape, so I'm gonna go ahead and install the brace for the strut mounts. Go ahead and reinstall those and tighten the bolts down. Now we're ready to put the cowling pieces back together. So you're just going to slip them back into place and make sure that they tuck up underneath. You have to lift this little rubber grommet up and tuck it underneath and fit everything. So start with the passenger side first. You can lift this rubber grommet up all the way if you want to, and kind of tuck it under, and you'll feel it or look and see in there how it kind of mounts. And then drop this side, and then turn your little plastic nuts here clockwise, quarter turn, and that locks it into place. So it's nice and tight. Then you'll do the same thing with the opposite side, but the only difference is you gotta kind of keep these little tabs here lined up. You gotta make sure that they're in the place where they can slide into these. At the same time, you gotta maneuver it around. And then after you're done, I went ahead and took the rubber grommet completely off here, and then put that back on. So you link it together in the center. Make sure it's tucked into its position right here. You turn the lock nut a quarter turn clockwise, so you get the plate. You put it on where the lines up with that, and once you do, you push it towards the passenger side of the car and locks it in place. And you make sure that these are quarter turn and lock down here. Now you can go ahead and remount the torque screws that were here, and the one on the opposite side over here. Now I'm going to put the weather stripping back on, so it just pushes back on over the groove here. Now I'm going to go ahead and reinstall the cabin filters, and these little tabs just hook in the holes in the back. Hook those in, and then you'll rotate it down, and then you'll turn the little catch here a quarter turn clockwise and pop on the snap top right there. After that, on the passenger side here, we got the ambient air temperature switch and the hood switch. Need to plug those back in. You'll do the same for the driver's side. Now you can reinstall the top engine cover and remount the four nuts that held it on. And that completes the job of replacing the NOx sensors on a 2009 BMW 550i. I'm Eslick from Automotive. I'd like to thank you guys for watching my videos. Encourage you to subscribe.